Today started with a doozy of a statement from the Republican chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Mike Turner. Mr. Turner put out a statement warning about a serious national security threat without giving any actual details. Instead, Congressman Turner released information about the serious national security threat to all the members of Congress and then called on President Biden to declassify the information. Which means that, practically speaking, today featured Congress members shuffling in and out of a secure room in a basement on Capitol Hill, learning about whatever this threat is, and then giving winking, cryptic statements like, it's a serious issue, but it's not going to ruin your Thursday. And I can confirm it says what we all know, that there is no intelligent life in Congress. White House officials told NBC News today that the matter in question is indeed serious, but there were ways to contain this threat without triggering mass panic. Thank you, Mr. Turner. NBC has not independently confirmed this, but the New York Times and ABC News are reporting tonight that the threat cited by House Intel Chair Turner is the attempted development of a space-based anti-satellite nuclear weapon in Russia. And while we don't know any more than that, the fact that it is a Russian threat and that a Republican in Congress is the one sounding the alarm, well, that feels significant, particularly this week. Because just this past Saturday, the Republican frontrunner and the de facto leader of the GOP said this.
NATO was busted until I came along. I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. If we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. That is what Donald Trump is telling Russia to do to America's allies, whatever the hell Russia wants. Those statements this past Saturday did not happen in a vacuum. Days earlier, Tucker Carlson traveled to Russia and interviewed Russian President Vladimir Putin. Or should we say, Tucker Carlson traveled to Russia to get a lecture from Russian President Vladimir Putin, because for 2 hours, Putin hardly let Carlson get a word in edgewise. Instead, President Putin offered his version of a Russian history lesson.
What you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not. Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of western Ukraine. So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks.
Those sincere thoughts from President Putin went beyond merely claiming Ukraine as Russian territory. Those sincere thoughts also pointed towards something even more alarming, which is how Putin views the rest of Europe, and in particular, our NATO ally, Poland.
Before World War II, Poland collaborated with Hitler, and although it did not yield to Hitler's demands, as the Poles had not given the Danzig corridor to Germany, it went too far, pushing Hitler to start World War II by attacking them.
I mean, who could forget that Adolf Hitler was forced to invade Poland because Poland was stubborn and wouldn't simply surrender? Thank you, President Putin. Now, that interview was released Thursday. Putin, who is already at war in Ukraine, threatened America's NATO allies in American media on Thursday. Donald Trump's response to that on Saturday was to say, I would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want. And the response of the Republican Party, the party of Russia hawks, their response to Trump's statement was largely stuff like this.
Donald Trump is not a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He doesn't talk like a traditional politician. And we've already been through this now. You'd think people had figured it out by now.
Yeah, I just encourage people not to overreact. I've learned a long time ago not to overreact to what President Trump says or what he tweets. I think that people should take everything he says seriously, but not literally.
Well, I take what everything President Trump seriously, but I don't take everything he says literally.
When Speaker of the House Mike Johnson was asked about Trump's NATO statement, he said simply, not going to comment on that, and moved on. But other Republicans went even farther, actually embracing Trump's sentiment. Senator Lindsey Graham said the point here is to, in Trump's way, to get people to pay. Senator Tom Cotton said that Trump is simply ringing the warning bell for our allies. That is where the Republican Party is on Russia right now. It's either see no evil, hear no evil, or threaten our allies to cough up some cash or throw them to Russia. That's the party line. So while we still do not know what exactly this mystery threat is that the Republican chair of the House Intelligence Committee is warning everyone about, the fact that it is a Russian threat and that he, a Republican, is the one flagging it is significant. Not because Congressman Mike Turner might single-handedly change the Republican position here, but because the Republican position has gotten so extreme that calling out the threat posed by a nuclear-armed authoritarian feels like some kind of rebellion against Republican Party orthodoxy. That is how tight Donald Trump's grip on the GOP is right now.